Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Friday, September 26th, a little after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Markets are closed. We're ready to get into our weekend, and this is our daily recap for our four Roundhill weekly paying funds. The first three are 0DTE covered call strategies on the indexes, QDTE for the NASDAQ 100, XDTE for the S&P 500, and RDTE for the Russell 2000. The last is a Bitcoin covered call strategy, YBTC, where they create a synthetic position in IBIT and then sell calls off of that on a weekly basis to generate income. Since it is Friday, this will also be the day where we make our guesstimates for what next week's payments will be. If you don't already follow me on X, go ahead and do so, at ETF_Inspector1. I let you know when videos are coming out as well as what the daily trades are for these 0DTE funds. All right, let's take a look at how the market performed today. First off, NASDAQ 100 was up about 0.44%. QDT was able to outperform, going up 0.5%. SPX was up 0.59%. XDTE outperformed again, 0.69% increase. The Russell 2000 was up nearly 1%, 0.97. RDTE was not able to keep up, 0.85% was the increase. And then finally, YBTC is based off of IBIT, which was down 0.26%, while YBTC was up 0.05%. So 3 out of the 4 funds outperformed their underlying, and all 4 went up today. Little disclosure, I do own shares of all 4 of these. Sorry if you didn't hear it in the other videos. I am coming down with some sort of cold or something, so I'm coughing and sneezing and sore throat. So, all right, let's start off with the trades, the 0-day trades for the day. QDTE sold 395 calls on the NDX at a strike price of $24,570, collected $20.13 per share premium, or $795,000. NDX closed at 24,503. That's well below that 24,570. So it didn't cost anything to settle out and resulted in a full profit of $795,000. Since this is the last day of the week, we did sum it up and we lost $3.7 million trading this week. But we do know there's a delay. So the money made for this week does not determine next week's payout. It determines the week after that. So we have to look back at the previous week for information on the nearest payment coming. They did make a little over $1 million trading last week on QDTE, but when we divide that out by the amount of outstanding shares, it comes out to less than 4 cents per share. That's what this line is right here when we're coming up with our guesstimate. So next, I like to average out like the last month or so. I don't want a big average, because if the price was much higher, then the payments were much higher. That doesn't really relate. So the last month is a more realistic time frame. If we look at QDTE over the last month, it's only changed by 0.8%. So that's a good time frame to use. We've got, 22.2676 is the average. I put 20 on there, thinking about increasing it. I want to go 21, but I don't. I'm going to go 20.5. That'll be my guess for this week. Since yesterday, no changes in the holdings. The deep in the money calls have all stayed the same. There's $954 million in assets under management. There was a lot of people buying into the fund yesterday, which is odd because you can't get the distribution if you buy in yesterday. But then again, Roundhill is a little slow on updating that, so maybe these people bought in a couple days before. But in any case, outstanding shares increased by 700,000 up to 27,110,000. Our NAV at the start of the day was 35.20, so that small increase took us up to 35.39 closing price. Today is distribution day, payday, so we all got 20.3 cents per share deposited in our account. Mine's on drip, so it just bought more shares. And the next declaration is 5 days away on October 1st. Next we go to XDTE. They sold 630 calls on SPX at a strike price of 6,655, collecting $5.48 per share premium, or $345,000. SPX closed at 66.43, below that 66.55. Doesn't cost anything to settle out, and resulted in a full $345,000 profit on the trading day. Again, when we total out the entire week, it was a loss of $892,000. So when we look at how last week's performance went, we have $728,000 profit. So when we divide that by the outstanding shares, it comes out to about 7.5 cents per share. Not enough to pay the standard distribution. So then we start looking to the average. Our average is really right around 20 cents per share. If we look at XDTE over the course of the last month, it's practically unchanged, 0.04% up. So we're going to go right with that average and say 20 cents. Now that would be a big increase from the last payment, so I'm kind of going out on a limb. I could end up looking bad here with a guesstimate of 20. But I'll stick with it for now. So 20 cents per share is my guess. That would be a nice jump up from the payment we just received today of 16.9314 cents. Again, no change in holdings. Assets under management, 414 million. People bought into this fund, 200,000 shares was the most recent increase, bringing it up to just under 9.5 million outstanding shares. NAV at the start of the day, 43.75, before it went up to 44.05. So these are going to generally trade very close to their NAV because they're basically a sum of money divided by an amount of shares. It's not like a company that you're trading where you're looking at sales and profits and revenues and liabilities and assets. This is just this chunk of money divided by that many shares. All right, final of the 3 0DTEs, we have RDTE selling 670 calls on the Russell 2000 with a strike of 2,430. They collected $4.11 per share premium, or $275,000. Russell 2000 closed at 24.3432. That is $4.32 beyond the strike price. So we input that in our closeout cost, and it's just a little bit more than what we received. So after paying out that $289,000, it resulted in a $14,000 loss on the trading day. When we total up the entire week, it was a loss of $487,000. And when we look to the previous week's trading to try and come up with our estimate for the next payment, it's negative, so that doesn't help us at all. Obviously, they are not going to pay out a negative distribution. Next, we look at the average over the last month. Let's take a look at how the fund has performed over the last month. They're actually down 1.23%, so it would make sense that we're going to probably get a payment under the average payment for the last month. So the most recent, 19.26 cents, we just got that today. My guess is 22, but there's a chance it could be even lower, closer to that 19, but that's what I'm going to go with, below the average, but above the most recent payment. There was a small change. They bought more deep in the money calls expiring December 18th of 2026 at a strike price of $246.20. I know that's an odd number, especially on a $2,000 underlying, but these are flex options that they buy. We don't have access to them, but they picked up 8 more. So yesterday it was at 260. Today it's at 268. There's $161 million in assets under management in the fund, and people bought into it to the tune of 200,000 shares most recently, bringing it up to 4,810,000 outstanding shares. The NAV at the start of the day, 33.55. We went up and ended at 33.39. So generally what that tells us is there has been a change in the outstanding shares that is just not up to date yet. Unfortunately, they are a few days behind sometimes. So obviously, if everything we've got is worth 33.55 and then we went up almost 1%, we would not be able to purchase it at 33.39, less than what it's worth. It just doesn't work that way. All right. And then finally, we've got YBTC. They're a day off, so they actually declare Tuesdays, go X Wednesdays, and pay out on Thursday. So we got our YBTC payment yesterday of 41.2680 cents per share. Or I'm sorry, that's my guesstimate. The most recent payment was practically 41 cents. We got 41 cents. My guesstimate is very close to that, about a quarter of a cent higher. So I think it's going to be right in line with the payment we just got. Based on yesterday's drop, the synthetic value of our IBIT combo, they call these sometimes, or synthetic position, was almost $23 million in the negative. It went down again today, so that will get just a little bit worse. We do know we won the trades, so even at the end of yesterday, these were only going to cost a penny to close out, these calls that were expiring today. So unfortunately, you can't pay less than a penny. So they would have closed them out today for roughly $52,000. And not sure why that's not lining up exactly right. So it was probably fractions of a penny. But in any case, generally when they sell out the next one, it's collecting $2 to $3 million. So that's going to be a pretty nice win on the option trade, at least, as it ended well out of the money. Assets under management, $317 million. Outstanding shares, 7,310,000. NAV at the start of the day, $43.41. It only dropped a fraction, so that makes sense right around that $43.39 closing price. We'll find out on Tuesday if my guesstimate is close, at 41.2 cents. Now, I know a lot of people like to ask about some of the other ones. While I do not cover them, we can just take a quick peek at YETH, because they're going to announce on the same day as YBTC. So let's see, from July 8th on, we're going 35, 38, 34, 29, 23, 24, 43, 39, 51, 44, 39, 39. Kind of all over the place. If I had to make a guess, I'd probably, well, let's take a look at what their chart looks like. Whew, having a bad month. Down 13%. So I would guess that their payment's going to be in the 30s, cents-wise, 30-something cents. Kind of tracking this decrease from the earlier portion of the month to the later portion of the month, probably even lower than the most recent. So, but that's without taking a look and seeing how they made out with their trade, anything like that. But obviously, if things are dropping, it's because the underlying is dropping. So they probably won their call for the week. And then let's see, WPay. I kind of don't update this all the time, but I did recently, with everything being behind. I think I came up with a guesstimate somewhere around 62 cents per share. Some of these numbers are outdated, but that also makes sense because they're not doing it next week's payment off of this week's numbers. It'll be off the week before, so that's why I held off on updating the numbers. But I've got a guess in around 62 cents. All right, that's all I have for you. Those last two aren't really a whole lot of time or effort put into them, so the first four are the ones that I really cover. Hope you have a good weekend, and catch you in the next video.